happy. He told me what he sold over there in the first 24 hours, and good for him.
Yeah. Well, I'm Johnny Detroit, pregame.com. I'm with Dave Essler, Uncle Dave. It's hard to really say what he's an expert in. He knows it all. He's a baseball guy, college football, across the board. Um, Specializes in the SEC. And we're going to talk a lot of stuff. We're going to talk college basketball. I know that's what a lot of people are here. We're going to go over some handicapping tips. But with some big SEC games, especially the Alabama and LSU game on the table this upcoming weekend, I'm going to talk some SEC football with Dave. So what we're going to do something a little different to start. Normally, we go through a bunch of slides, but what I want to do right now is I want to get right into some college basketball, Dave. And can you see my screen, or are you just calling in via the phone?
I probably could if I. Yeah, there you go. I got it.
Okay. Well, what I'm doing right now is I'm looking at the odds right now for the upcoming men's college basketball season and the odds to win it all. We got Indiana at 6-1, Louisville at 7-1, NC State and Kentucky, UCLA at 12-1, and so on and so on. So I did this with Hook. Me and VR talked a little bit. I personally still, am a fan of Kentucky. I'm not backing Indiana. My long shot is Arizona at 30-1. As of now, I mean, obviously none of these guys have taken, the court yet. So as of now, if I had to ask you, who would you bet on in terms of who's most likely going to win, throwing out the odds? I know a lot of guys, won't lay a bet and lock up money for 3 months at a time to take a huge favorite. But if it was someone else fronting the cash, so throw away, taking the big favorites, who would you take as of now based off your preseason handicapping and what you know about the programs, the teams coming in, the schedules, and whatnot? Who's your pick to win it all?
Well, on paper or best value?
Let's go paper first. If you had to bet,
If I had to bet and it was paper first and it was value, UCLA.
all right. So UCLA sitting at 12-1. Who would you
And
take in terms
actually,
of?
they were at 25-1 at Bet Online today. I got a little piece of that.
Or let me jump over there right now. And that's one of the things for anyone watching is, to be honest, line shopping. You always hear people say, line shop, how important it is for your actual games. But I'll tell you what, line shopping for futures is monstrous.
Oh, it's huge.
It's big. To me, it's almost big as, if not bigger than anything. And look, we'll go right here. UCLA, perfect example. UCLA at Bet Online, 25-1.
Yeah, and I took them. I didn't see that. I just saw that today when I was half preparing to do this because I don't use them that much, and I had already bet them at 12-1 at 5 times.
Yeah, and they're 12-1 here at sportsbook.com. So that just really shows you, and that's going to even go into something else when we get to the baseball. These books putting up some preseason lines. So right now, and I'm glad you said that, Dave, because that shows the people watching is, they might say, okay, I'll jump on the 12-1, but you go over here, same team, same bet, 25-1. So it's almost 200, double your value. So if you put a dime on it, let's do the math. UCLA ends up winning for just line shopping that bet alone. You just went from winning 12,000 to 25,000. So that's a monster.
Well, you know what? One of the things I don't know if people, there's a lot of really sharp people, but there's a lot of people that are sort of new to this, and they don't want to tie up a lot of money for 5 months, or they don't, they want either the big score or the short thing, but then you can get into hedging. I mean, if you're tying up X amount of money, I mean, you don't have to tie up a lot. You can almost always get out of it at some point in one game, in the tournament, in the Final Four. And if you take the right set of teams, and obviously, half the team doesn't get suspended or half the team doesn't get injured, they're going to be there in a position to be able to buy out of it later on in the year.
I mean,
so you're not just banking on UCLA to win the whole thing. assuming they even let Muhammad play, which is why I think that their lines are all over the board at these different shops. Is they cleared Anderson to play, but they still haven't cleared Muhammad to play. The kid's a freshman, and they've already made him like the number 3 point guard on the planet. He hasn't played the game yet.
I
So
mean,
that if he gets declared ineligible in the next 10 days, well then UCLA will go to 50-1.
I mean, to be honest, perfect example, David. And to be honest, I said to be honest, twice. Perfect example you just said is Arizona. If you look at sportsbook.com, they have Arizona sitting at, let me pull it, let me do the alphabetical sort. They have Arizona at 30-1, where BetOnline has them 14-1. So it's almost like a total reversal. I like Arizona as a long shot, but at BetOnline they're 14-1. At
Well, I actually did throw a little bit at Arizona at 15-1.
And at Sportsbook they have them at 30-1. So if you had to take a long shot, and UCLA is obviously a long shot if you're playing them at BetOnline, what other teams do you think have a shot outside of the big dogs like the Indiana, the Louisvilles, the Kentuckys?
Well, to win the whole thing, I'll be honest with you, probably none. I mean, in reality, I mean, year after year, these teams will be picked to do this. Yeah, McDermott and Creighton can do this, and maybe Isaiah Cannon can take Murray State, so we should throw them at 100-1. But when it gets down to the Final Four, it's pretty much usually the blue bloods that are going to end up being there. I would look to find some of these shops that have prop bets on teams to make the Sweet 16, but to win the whole thing, I think you could probably take the top 10 or 12 teams and make everybody go away. I mean, if you want to take flyers on these 100-1 teams, Memphis is probably pretty good value. I don't know what you got them at, but they're going to run the table. They're not going to have a lot of competition, so they're probably going to be fairly well rested, and obviously they're well coached, and they've got a point guard, so they've got all the ingredients. I'll go with Memphis, Johnny.
All right, so to be honest, let's just look real quick. We got Memphis at sportsbook.com at 75-1, and BetOnline. This is classic shit. I swear to God. Look at this, 16-1 on Memphis at BetOnline. Sportsbook.com, Memphis. They have them at the hell, I'm going blind here. 75-1.
At 75-1, I would put $500 on him right now.
I mean, because what you could do is hedge it. I mean, if they get deep in the tournament, you could turn around and take the remaining teams. So if you got 75-1, let's just do the math real quick. 75-1, if you hit that, that's 37-5, right? So if they get deep in the tournament, you could probably put a nickel on every single team that's left, whatever odds there would be, and you're not going to place $37,000 in bets at a nickel a piece, and pretty much like lock in.
I'm not.
Wow. So going into the season, for the people who are listening and watching now, and for the people who are going to watch on the archives, I'm going to sit back and let you babble for a little bit, Dave. I'll cut you off if you babble too much, but I'm going to kind of let it be your show. What are you doing right now? What would you recommend? The season is about a week away. How would you prep the people that are your recreational bettors to be prepared when those first slate of games start in about 7 days?
Well, I did a lot of thinking about this, and college basketball, for me, handicapping it is nearly identical to college football. You have turnover in players, you have turnover in coaches, and you don't know what you're going to get out of the gate out of some of these guys. In the early part, just like college football, I'll bet on teams that have a good quarterback. In college, and that are experienced. In college basketball, I'll bet on teams that have a top 50 point guard with maybe a top scorer left. And then it's sort of, the season sort of matriculates. And a lot of people say, well, I'll wait till conference play and make a lot of money. I think you can make a lot of money now because the lines are so much softer than they're going to be in conference play. And to me, it's all about the experience. It's all about the point guard. And then you get sort of almost to conference play, and I start looking at strength of schedule, which is something same thing we look at in college football. You know, who have they played to get ready for this? And then you get into the conference play, and then you're into the revenge thing, and what happened last year, and what coach left this that they're upset with. So, aside from the statistical stuff from game to game to game, it's just like college football to me.
Hey, real quick, is I brought this up when I was talking to Hook, and I don't have the hard data to prove it. It's just been something historically from middling and talking to guys in Vegas or guys at middle and guys that bet for a living is their opinion, and I respect their opinion. Is the general belief in college basketball, and like I said, I don't have the hard data, but outside of the opinions I've gotten from guys that bet for a living, you could also see it in the sharper books, your Grandes, your Pinnacles. They either won't take certain bets in terms of how big the bets could be early on in the season. They don't put totals up until later in the day, and then when they do, they're lower limits than normal. And they don't start opening up the Pandora's box where they're taking the bigger bets and they're allowing you to bet totals to get closer or actually to conference play. The general belief that I have is college basketball, especially the totals, in the beginning of the season is probably one of the most beatable things in any of the major sports, at least. I mean, to me, anybody who could power rate and handicap the WNBA or arena football, the books to me don't have accurate and solid lines in those, and there are people that could destroy books when it comes to those obscure sports because they have to put all their focus on the stuff where they're getting all the big bets on. In the beginning of college basketball, I have always heard it is the most beatable sport of the major sports. And by the time you get to conference play, it's a lot tougher to beat. One, do you agree with that? And do you have any insider opinions on what I just said?
Yes, I absolutely agree with that. Insight and opinion, yeah, you have to put a ton of work into it, and you have to have your numbers ready because, like you said, I mean, there are books and that won't put totals out until 45 minutes before a game's going to start, or even less. And it's not uncommon for a total to come out at 130, 130 points. I don't mean 130 during the day. 130 points a half an hour before the game starts, and by tip-off, it's 145. So to get the best of that number, you got to be right on it. You got to be really sharp. In terms of, I mean, to me, it's almost impossible to put that out as a pregame paid premium play. That's got to be a Twitter play early on because you just, a lot of books, like you said, a lot of books won't even have them. I know Bet Online's pretty good about it, but
I mean, what you said key is for me. Some of the best runs that I ever had actually weren't from betting games themselves, but it was sometimes almost free money when you could find those outs, and especially if you find a dumb local that's not going to move early in the season. The fluctuation, especially on those totals, is insane. And you could just sit back literally and count the cash in just middle college basketball in the beginning because
oh, absolutely. And I've actually been on the outside looking in of a few of those that you got to be careful following that ridiculous amount of steam because with no money on the line, it's not going to take a $500,000 to move it 5 points, and people will move it 10 points and then bet it back the other way. I got caught in one of those with a Sunbelt game 3 years ago, and I'll never forget it. And
a couple years ago,
it was a you could call it a bad beat, but I foolishly followed a line move too late. So
a couple years ago, I remember it was just before the books started getting paranoid when they all got pussified and they started lowering the limits a lot. And like you said, they weren't putting up totals so late in the day. So it was last year before that happened. And I remember I had a credit account at a bookmaker, and I was allowed to bet 2 times a game. And I would bet, and I'm no Billy Walters or anything, but to go to what you just said, is I would bet, and the lines would move a half a point on these totals just by me betting into Chris because I'd bet it, and then you'd see the screen move because I was doing it earlier in the morning, and then people would chase it. And I wasn't, I'm not no professional mover. I'm not Billy Walters. My account really wasn't tagged, but it just shows that they are so paranoid of any big bet on a total that they were moving a half a point. And it literally got to the point that the year following that, I remember Pinnacle, it was before they cut everybody off. I had a credit account for them, and they limited my total bets to like $250 on totals. And this is Pinnacle, you know, the holy grail of offshore sports books. $250 on a total is almost laughable. You know, and then you got Grande, who, you know, isn't afraid of any kind of action.
Yeah, but they put out numbers late, so you're not gonna get
exactly, Dad. That's what I was gonna say. Is they're sharp and not afraid of action, but they're also smart because
they're also gonna get the best number more often than not.
And to be honest, that's one thing a lot of people ask me when they ask for basic tips. And you know, if you have a full-time job, it's difficult to do a lot of the things we're talking about. So you know, sometimes you could literally just watch a Grande or some of the sharper books, and if you have a local with a shitty credit shop that they got some dude not watching the lines or some old school guy doing the phones. I mean, you don't even need to know the starting lineup is. If you see Grande move a point or two about 10 minutes before the game is about to go, and you can get that other line through someone else. I mean, you could, to be honest, I mean, I want to hear your thoughts on this, Dave. You could almost bet blind if, you know, because you're really not chasing the steam at the point because it's technically going to be the closing number because it's so close to game time. You just sit back, watch Grande move to what their closing number is going to be, and then pick off these guys that don't know any better. Do you have any thoughts on that kind of strategy?
Oh, you can absolutely do that. You know, it's probably not for the faint of heart to do it that way, but yeah, you can make money doing that for sure.
All right, so
I don't know. I don't know too many people that might be listening that would have the balls to do that. But yes.
All right, what conferences for college basketball, Dave? Because I don't want to put you on the spot because, I mean, I know it's literally impossible to know everything because college basketball, like football, is, you know, nobody follows Dayton, LaSalle, and Butler in college football.
Hey, now wait a minute.
In college football, they don't. But what I'm saying, college basketball, you know, you got
I know Butler's not in the Horizon League anymore.
But in college basketball, you know, the Atlantic 10 and, you know, a lot of these conferences are, you know, are the games that are on TV, and it's not just the premier conferences. So it's a lot harder to know everything about the conferences. So I'm going to go conference by conference. If you know enough about it, I'll stop, and we'll go over some of the teams. The Greek has some early futures up on the teams to win the conference, and just get your thoughts on some of your picks or any value. So I'll go conference by conference. Don't be afraid to pass because, I mean, if you know something about enough conferences that you can be a pick on every one of these, I'm going to be bowing down that you know that much about college basketball. So we'll start off. ACC. Do you know enough about it yet?
Enough about it to say what?
The Greek right now is odds to win each conference. Right now, the Greek has NC State.
Yeah, well, I think North Carolina State's the chalk, and I put a little bit on them to win the whole thing.
All right, so NC State.
I think the overvalued team in that conference is Florida State because they lost a ton of people and they were a super experienced team last year.
And that's a good thing to point out because you know they're in the middle of the packet plus 650. Because right now they got NC State at plus 200, North Carolina plus 300, Duke at plus 250, and then Florida State. Is there any value in anyone else, or do you just think that those premier teams in a conference like the ACC, with so much talent, technically can take advantage? And you know, with the talent they have, you're not going to see a team like Boston College win the ACC.
No, you're not. I mean, you know, from a winning the whole thing standpoint, it's probably got to be Duke, North Carolina, or NC State. I don't see anybody else sneaking in there. And I don't like North Carolina. They're just entirely too young for me. So if I had to bet that, I'd have to take the chalk. You know, Virginia's a team I'll bet on an awful lot because they've got a super lockdown defense. And we'll bet a lot of unders on Virginia because they play a really slow tempo. But in terms of winning that conference, I would just go with the Blue Bloods.
Okay, so we're going to lay the chalk there. We're down to the Atlantic 10. You know enough about them to make a call, or you want me to move on?
I'll take Butler.
All right, we got Butler. They're
you know, the only reason I wouldn't take Butler is, you know, you got all those traditional A10 teams that are there that are kind of gonna probably have Butler in their sights. The value there, I think, is Temple. I got him at plus 375, strictly because I think that they're one of the best coach teams in the country. I can't remember the guy's name. I'll think of it in a second. I took over for them. I took over for Cheney. Um, he's done a great job up there.
What about the Big 12?
Tell the old,
Right now, the
that's
chalk in
where
the
I would
Big
go.
12 is Kansas and Texas.
Fran Dunphy was the guy I was trying to think of. Big 12?
Yeah, we got Kansas and
Big
Texas
12.
as the
Wow.
chalk, and then West Virginia, Baylor.
Yeah, Kansas and Texas are the chalk, but I'm not going to bet on plus 150s. I would have to throw some money on Baylor strictly because they've got the athleticism that probably they can probably play athletically with any of those teams. But Scott Drew is probably not the coach to get him there. The team I think is a waste of money out there is K-State because they lost Frank Martin to South Carolina and they inherited Bruce Weber, and I really wonder what kind of offense he's going to run at K-State. If he ran anything like he did at Illinois, then K-State might as well be plus 15-25.
All right, real quick before we move on.
I would throw money on Baylor. I wouldn't waste money on K-State.
Just real quick before we move on, I want to give Dave a little plug. Dave puts a lot of great stuff out on Twitter, and you can find Dave at Dave_Essler. That's DAVE_ESSLER. I got his Twitter page up right now. So if you're a Twitter person, tons of great information. You definitely want to check Dave out on Twitter. So we're going to move on from the Big 12 to the Big East, where it looks like Louisville is the chalk 2-1. Pitt's paying $350. You got Georgetown at $650, Syracuse at $500, and then everybody else looks like double digits. Any value outside of Louisville, or is Louisville the clear-cut favorite to you?
As much as I like Louisville and I like Pitino and I like Peyton Siva, and Louisville's probably going to have one of the best defenses in the country, I don't know how they're going to score. I remember talking to VR when we did that podcast last year, and I took Louisville to get to the Final Four strictly because of Pitino and Siva and made a lot of money. But I don't think they're going to take anybody by surprise this year. My pick to click in the Big East is Notre Dame. As much as I am not an Irish fan, they bring everybody back, and I looked at their schedule, and with the exception of one game, they may be undefeated going into conference play, and they play some pretty good non-conference teams. They actually play Kentucky at home. I'm looking forward to that game. The end of November, and I actually think they could beat Kentucky because I don't think Kentucky can duplicate what they did last year. And the only other loss I see potentially for Notre Dame before conference is at Cincinnati, which that's kind of a coin flip game. So I think Notre Dame's going to have an assload of momentum. So that would be why I did actually throw money on Notre Dame to win the Big East.
Okay, before we get to the Big Ten, just real quick, is when we end up at the webinar at the end, as always, we're going to give you a coupon. And the coupon's going to be $10 off any one purchase. What I want to do now is for the people who are watching this live is I'm going off the cuff with these conversations with Dave. So he obviously knows his shit. So what I'm going to do is anybody who's listening and watching right now, if you want to invest in Dave and you want to either get his combo or his college basketball package, shoot me an email. It's the lowest pricing it's going to be for a couple more days right now up at the site. I will cut you a coupon and give anybody who's listening right now a discount. I mean, Dave knows his shit in college basketball. Dave, real quick, before we move on to the Big Ten, and I'm going to have some questions about my Michigan team. So go over and tell the audience real quick, historically, how could you recap your career at Pregame in regards to college basketball for your clients?
Well, that's kind of where it all got started 3 years ago when we hit 70% over a 3-month period, like January to March. And that was actually before I was a pro, and it was wild. We had like 7,000 views per day, every day, 7 days a week. It was amazing stuff. Won about 80 units that year, and then the following year, I forget what we won. I don't have it in front of me, 30-something. Last year we won We won. We did really well last year, but I'll be honest, we gave a little bit back in March Madness, and I know exactly why. But we've always done very well, and at the end of the year, we've always come out ahead. You know me; I'm not going to sit here and tell people that they're going to make $1 million and retire on college basketball. But we'll have a lot of fun, and we'll probably have more money in March than we have in November. That's all you're going to get from me, buddy.
That's about as touty as Uncle Dave will ever be. All right, we're on to the Big Ten, my conference, right now, which is kind of funny to me because Michigan opened up at number 5 in the country, but I'm looking right now at the Greek, and they got Indiana, the chalk at plus 175, and then they got Michigan State ahead of Michigan at plus 300, and then they got Michigan, Ohio State, and Wisconsin all at plus 500. What are your thoughts on the Big Ten Conference? And entertain me a little bit. Give me some thoughts on my Michigan Wolverines.
No, I'm not going to do that. And if you entertain me, I mean, I don't think Michigan's in it for the long haul. Um, they got Trey Burke, they got a point guard, they're going to win some games. They're probably going to win most of their home games and end up, you know, right probably where they're picked to be, fourth or fifth. I mean, Indiana's just got too much talent. I won't bet against Izzo, and Ohio State brings everybody back, and they've got one of the best backcourts in the country. And Martin knows how to play defense. So, in as much as I would love to tell you that you could get a do-over in the World Series or a do-over with the Wolverines, I don't think Michigan's going to be there in the
end. You had to bring out the World Series, didn't you? Okay, we're gonna.
Yeah, you had fun with Gil, so I was going for that aspect.
All right, I'm gonna skip. You know what? Let's get right to your conference because we got about another 25 minutes left. We still got to get to the coupon. I want to talk some baseball and some football, and then we're gonna have some questions to go. So I'm gonna jump ahead to the SEC. I know that's your conference. I'm looking right now. This is based off the Greek sides. Kentucky's the chalk at plus 150. Florida plus 285. From there, we got Alabama plus 650. And then we got Missouri and Tennessee at plus 800. And real quick, a funny story is I was actually on a where the hell was I coming back from? It was what football? Oh, it was the Sugar Bowl. We were at the Sugar Bowl, me and a friend of mine, and we were at the airport when we were flying back to Detroit from the Sugar Bowl. There was a guy who was a recruiter from Alabama who was on our flight, and he was in New Orleans, with the program, but he was flying into Detroit because he was going to recruit a player. And it was just interesting to hear him kind of vent, like, how the basketball program, like, doesn't get the attention like anything close to the football. And, it's almost like they're picking up the scraps. And he was flying out to, I think he was going to look at some kid in Flint, some kid that he said really wasn't on the radar, but they really thought was a stud. So looking at the SEC right now, I heard you mention earlier about Kentucky being too young. Do you think that they're overvalued at the plus 150? So, or what?
I guess I would have to say yes, but yeah, they're the blue bloods, but I think that last year was just something special, and they're still living off of that. I wouldn't put any money on them at plus 150 because there's just not enough value for me to do that.
Is there anybody?
I think in all likelihood they'll be there in the end, but you're talking a conference tournament. Yeah, they're going to probably have the best record in the conference, probably. But now you're talking a conference tournament, and you're talking 18-year-old kids, and they're going to go play a conference tournament against 3 or 4 other really good teams, and just to be able to boat race everybody again like they did without one stumbling block, I just don't see it.
So is there any value on any of the other teams? So if I said, okay, look, I don't want to lock my money up. I'm saying I'm a client, Dave, and I go to you and say, hey, I don't want to lock my money up on Kentucky. Almost even money at plus 150. Is there somebody, if I was a junkie and I just had to bet a future on the SEC conference, it doesn't have to be a 20-1, something with some decent value. Who would you give me as my value play?
Probably Tennessee. they got Trey Golden, who's a point guard, he's in the top 25 in the country. Conzo Martin did a great job with them. They only lost Cameron Tatum from last year. They bring most everybody back. I think Tennessee's probably the undervalued team, and the other one I would tell you is perhaps Missouri. Um, they played a style before they came into the SEC that's very SEC friendly. So I think they could do very well. And I would probably throw a little bit on Florida just because it's Billy Donovan, and it's kind of like betting against Nick Saban. You just don't do that. So Florida, Missouri, and Tennessee would probably be three I'd put money on.
All right, now we're gonna
Alabama talent-wise, but I'm just not sure they're mature enough. They lost to Michael Green, and that may be tougher to replace than people think.
All right, I got a couple cool questions, Dave, and I'm gonna go through. These are Jimmy Vaccaro. I sent him an email, and
You want to do the Big Sky too?
nah, unless you got a big pick for the Big Sky. I'm sure everyone will want to hear it. Are you trying to be
I don't
funny?
know anybody. I don't know anybody that's got a number on it, but I'll take Montana.
All right, let's see if the Greek has it up. We got the Pac-12, Mountain West, uh, Mid American, Big Ten. Nope, 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 nope.
They're probably minus 400. They got nobody pays attention, but those are actually some conferences you can win in because the lines tend to be softer. But Montana's lines won't be one of them.
I sent an email to the people at William Hill.
They probably have a lottery pick. They probably have a lottery pick point guard in Will Cherry out there.
I'm baffled how much you know about college basketball. So I'm going to switch gears, Dave.
Well, so does North Texas. That kid Tony Mitchell, he'll be a lottery pick. So there's one of your sort of play on teams early. North Texas.
Let's switch to football. I sent an email to my guy at William Hill. He checked with legendary bookmaker Jimmy Vaccaro, who works for them. I had a simple question. Neutral field. This year's teams, the games played next week. Alabama versus Notre Dame, Alabama versus Oregon, Alabama versus Kansas State.
Halftime stats.
I'm going to tell you 24-14 Ohio. I'm going to tell you the lines. This is neutral field. Tell me who you'd pick and why. There's a couple lines. First one, Alabama neutral field versus Notre Dame is Alabama minus 13. Who do you take and why?
Right now?
Yep.
I'm taking Notre Dame because one thing I don't do in college football is lay double digits against anybody. And I would have been one of the last people that would have thought they'd beat Oklahoma, let alone cover. I was wrong with the rest of the planet. If anybody's going to put together one game to beat Alabama or at least stay within 2 touchdowns, it's probably going to be Chip Kelly. Talent-wise, there's probably a 4-touchdown discrepancy, but one game, I'll take the points.
All right, second team, neutral field, Alabama versus Oregon, Alabama minus 4. Who do you like and why?
Alabama. See Auburn versus Oregon of 2 years ago.
And to be honest, Oregon, maybe at the end of the year, possibly Oregon. But right now, Alabama's, they've played and dominated some decent school. Oregon, they played Colorado. I mean, they've played.
Yeah, they haven't played a very good schedule. Hence, they're not in the top 2 or 3 in the BCS like they think they ought to be. And when you run up 60 points at halftime and stop scoring and then win 67-35 because you let the Water Boys play, that might be great for continuing to get the youth developed for next year. But when you then get into a big game against maybe Southern Cal or Alabama as a 4-point dog, then you're asking your players to play 60 minutes, and they're only used to playing 30, and Alabama will just wear their ass out.
The biggest thing to me about, like you said, with Oregon not playing anybody and they're just blowing everybody out, and USC, and I had USC last week. It looked like such a square play under a touchdown, but I just wasn't buying into Arizona. And I'm quite aware, obviously, that Arizona beat them. But if you look at the game, USC, they put up 600-plus yards. They turned the ball over 5 times. I mean, really, Arizona didn't beat anyone. USC beat themselves. I mean, they were just really sloppy play, bad penalties. And, they moved the field up and down the field on Arizona. And they played that game 10 times. USC beats them and covers them 9 out of the 10. But the thing that astonishes me the most is, I mean, I know USC's been real disappointing this year, but before the season started, USC, and this was a bettable line, was favored by 6 over Oregon. Now they're getting 8.5. So, to be honest, if it was an end-of-the-year game, maybe Oregon, after I've seen them play some better schools. But right now, after the bums they played, I'm taking Alabama also. So, we're going to go on to the last one. And I was skimming around, and I lost where the hell the lines were.
Well, would it be interesting to go back and look at that line for future references? What was USC before they picked up Silas Red? Because when they picked up Silas Red out of Penn State, they anointed him in the BCS title game right then and there. That's a lot of pressure on a couple of kids.
True, and that's a great point. The last one is neutral field versus Kansas State, Alabama -11. Who do you like and why?
Well, can I pass?
Nope.
Well,
we'll make it a fair bet. You don't got to bet real money.
A neutral field. Okay, here is it the neutral field like in Jerry World, which would attract a lot more Kansas State people, or is it the neutral field in the Sugar Bowl, which would attract a lot more Alabama people?
See, now you're getting technical on my ass. Let's say.
If you want me to bet money, I got to know these things.
How about How about this? How about we'll say it's played at the.
I'll take Alabama.
All right, and to be honest, I like Alabama also. Do you have any thoughts on the big game this weekend?
Yeah, but I'm not going to bet it. It's going to be too much fun to watch. If I was going to, I could make the argument either way. Yes, that's a buttload of points to give somebody, and you'll give LSU at home. I watched that crowd when they beat South Carolina, but I watched that game against South Carolina, obviously, and quite frankly, South Carolina had them. South Carolina was within 2 points and had the ball in the fourth quarter. And this is the game after they beat Georgia, so LSU wasn't taking them lightly. So just based on that, I have to think that Alabama, LSU is going to have to come up with a Herculean effort, but I can't lay 10 points, but I also can't make a really good case for taking them. I think the game's going to go over. I know nobody thinks that, and I don't know that I'll bet it yet. If I can get under the right number, I will. But Alabama's got an offense that I don't think LSU's seen all year either. And then LSU will get a couple of points. I almost see that as like a 28-14 Alabama final.
It looks like Chris opened that total up at 42.5, and it looks like they're sitting at 41 right now. So I got about 3 or 4 questions in queue. Then we're going to have to get to the coupon. But I have a question, so it's my show, so I can kind of do what I want to do. So I got a question to you, Dave.
Your whole website, Johnny. You can do whatever you want to do.
Well, Dave, you don't take no shit, so technically with you, I got to ask permission to be nice about it because you could tell me to go kick rocks. Real quick, I want your opinion.
You should see my Twitter feed. No, you don't.
You know a lot about baseball, so I'm actually going to write an article about this because it's pretty interesting to me. I'll tell you what the odds are, and then I'm going to ask you a question. You tell me what you think is right. I emailed my guy at Las Vegas Hilton, want to know, do you guys have any MLB World Series odds up for next year yet? They said no. He said, we'll have them next week. I don't know if I motivated him or what. 24 hours later, he emails me some odds. So I'm guessing that these are already posted.
Are these odds he just emailed, or can you actually bet these?
I believe that you could bet these, because usually they don't send anything to me unless it's actually posted. So right now, they have the favorite to win the World Series. They got the Angels at 7-1, the Yankees at 7-1, the Nationals at 8-1, and then they got the Detroit Tigers, the Rays, the Braves, the Phillies at 12-1. So technically, they got the Tigers in that second to third tier group. Okay, so this is Vegas. This is Las Vegas Hilton. This is Cornegay and his crew. Now, if you go to the offshores, they have the Detroit Tigers the favorite. Bet Online got them 7-1. And then they goes down to the Yankees at 7.5 to 1, the Angels 12 to 1, and then Bovada. No disrespect to the Bovada people, I know better online. They got, to me, better odds makers. Bovada sometimes, in my opinion, puts up lines more for the marketing effect of getting mentioned on radio that they have lines up. So the offshores are giving it more to the Tigers as the favorite out the gate, where you got Vegas. They have, what do we have here? We got the Angels and the Yankees. There's 2. The Nationals 3. Then the Dodgers and Rangers 4 and 5. Then they got 5 teams technically ahead of them, and then they have them lumped together with 3 or 4 teams. So my question to you is, as of now, who's right? The offshores thinking the Tigers are the team to beat, or Vegas thinking they're not?
I'm gonna knee jerk because I'm trying to do this from memory. What you just told me, who was where. I'm gonna go with the offshores and take the Tigers.
So you know what?
And
I don't want to sound like
I'm gonna tell you why your Tigers lost the World Series.
How
And I
about this?
know
If like it sounds kind of smart, can I give you a couple reasons why I bet San Francisco? And I took a lot of heat because I tweeted out and I said San Francisco in 6. These are all my reasons, and that's what shitload more in baseball than me as does Gil. So Gil said, a lot of what I just about to tell you made sense. So if I get like the blessing from you, then I'm going to feel really special because I'm not really a great baseball guy like you guys are. I bet San Francisco. As Gil will mention on tomorrow's podcast, I had a dime on them in that Game 4. I tweeted out, as anyone who follows me on Twitter could say, that I had them to win the World Series over the Tigers. I thought it would go at least 6. My reasoning was this: is first off, the Tigers were in a weak division. They would have been 5th in the wild card. They had all the momentum in the world beating the Yankees. Sweeping the Yankees and having that long break, to me, baseball, like other sports, there's a lot of momentum. And that long break, to me, was almost a rehash of what they had that year when they had to play St. Louis. And I know Leland, and the reason I know I'm not crazy is Leland said the same thing, and they were playing some of the minor league teams. But let's be honest, they're not pitching a 100-mile-an-hour fastball at Cabrera. So, I mean, how much of a scrimmage do you really think those games were? I felt San Francisco had a better bullpen. I felt they had better defense. And I felt that their size of their park negated our power hitting to the point that we had to come out and win Game 1 no matter what with Verlander, because they were technically throwing 0 to the Wolves, conceding Game 1. And if San Francisco could stole Game 1, we were in a lot of trouble. So that was my reasoning why I like San Francisco. So what did I miss, or do I sound kind of smart how what I just said?
No, I think you sound very smart. I totally get that. I was going to take it back one step further to the regular season. And you see a lot of this in other sports. You can probably tell me these numbers because you're a Tiger fan, but, what were they in the beginning or the middle of September? They were 3 or 4 games out of everything. And making the playoffs was probably even a stretch at one point. And I think they expended those last 2 or 3 weeks so much energy. I think it finally caught up with them. And then you get the momentum, but then you get the layoff to think about it, and then you realize how goddamn tired you are, and then you get a team like the Giants who are just streaking and steamroll you. I mean, now how many times you see that happen in football and the NFL? And the Giants beat the Patriots, and they just happen to get hot at the right time against a team that had to
The Packers. When the Packers won the Super Bowl 2 years ago, the same thing.
Well, yeah, I mean, there's tons of them. I just have one in particular in memory, but you find that happens a lot. I mean, the Seahawks got to the Super Bowl. You get hot at that.
I felt that layoff, and if they would have maybe played, I mean, this is going to sound homerish and like, Monday Night Quarterback, but if they would have maybe played
but it's your website and your show.
I really do think that if they played St. Louis, they probably would have had a better chance to win. And the reason I say that is because they would have got up for that series. I mean, the Yankees, you hate the Yankees, the A-Rod, the fans, the big money, the media. So that was a big series. And whooping the Yankees' ass, I mean, that was like a high point. They had the history with St. Louis, the old school World Series, the fact they beat us in 06. You get to play the Giants, no disrespect to the Giants, but there's no rivalry there. There's no hatred. The Giants aren't that big media team that everybody despises or overly loves like the Yankees. So how could you really get up to play the San Francisco Giants team like you could if you maybe played St. Louis and had revenge on your mind? So we got about 10 minutes left, Dave. I'm going to try knocking some of these questions out. And no disrespect to anybody who has a question. I'm going to have Dave give a couple lines so we can try getting to as many as possible. And the first one, this was one that was emailed in, so I want to give him the time and actually get his question answered on the air. Give me 2 seconds, Dave, because I need to pull it up because the screen's lighting up like a Christmas tree because everyone's now deciding to send the questions in. Where the hell is it at?
So I get to listen to the question and have 30 seconds to come up with an answer.
You know what? To be honest, I'm not going to answer.
I feel like you're like Alex Trebek and we're on Jeopardy here.
All right, here we go. When Mike Cook was on the webinar, he referenced how he handicaps NBA by the players. How do you handicap college basketball? The amount of upperclassmen, conference, travel schedule, coaching staff. If you can narrow it down to one thing that you would spend the most time on handicapping college basketball, what would it be?
Well, that's going to vary during the season. Right now, it's experience in point guards and coaching. And
Okay.
as teams start to gel, I may give a little bit. Bench strength is always very important to me. But that's going to be more of a factor as teams have played more games. So,
all right.
Right now it's experience.
Next question. And this question came about when we were talking national title game. Somebody said Oregon lost by 3 to Auburn, and they're not sure how you can compare that, why you should be laying 4 with Alabama.
Yeah, I knew that was coming. This year's Oregon team isn't that much better than that Oregon team, and this year's Alabama team is light years better than that Auburn team, who was basically Cam Newton and Cam Newton.
All right. Next question. Do you think Alabama repeats for the title?
I hope so, because that would be in my financial best interest.
What did you get him at?
Well, a little tip you can still get them at right now, and I'll actually have to thank one of my Twitter people. I think he got him at either plus 105 or minus 105 right now. He asked me what I thought, and I said, yeah, I was pretty dumb for not thinking of that myself. If they win out, which they may well, no matter who they play, they're going to be minus 350 to minus 400 at a minimum, and you could basically get them at even money right now.
That's a great point. College basketball's around the corner, Dave. They want to know, who do you feel is the best conference this year in college basketball?
The best conference, top to bottom?
Correct.
God, this is going to kill me, but it's probably the Big 12.
Really?
I mean, yeah. I mean, they've got some teams in the middle that are pretty damn competitive. Yeah, they've got your Billy Gillespie, Texas Tech or whatever it is, but top to bottom, even losing Missouri, I think they got probably the most competitive. I mean, I would, if you take the top 3 or 4 of any conference, I think they all kind of neutralize each other out on any given day. So I like to look at the middle of the road teams, and I think the middle of the road teams in the Big 12 are probably as good as either the SEC or the Big 10. And the Pac-12 is actually up there. If Arizona gels, they have the talent, but ever since their little debacle way back when with what's his name that plays for the Celtics, and they got put on probation, and they haven't been the same since. It was something after the Lute Olson thing. UCLA, I think Cal has probably the best backcourt, so let me rethink that. I might go to the Pac-12.
2 more questions before we get to the coupon and close out. And don't forget, anybody listening or watching, if you'd like to get Dave's early bird anything basketball, shoot me an email. I'll personally take care of you. If anyone who's listening to this who doesn't realize that Dave knows way too much shit about college basketball, then you're out of your mind, in my opinion. So 2 more quick questions, Dave. Who's your pick? And I know it's a hard question because there's so many teams, and you know so much about basketball. For you to give me an answer really quick, I understand if you could just give me a couple of the teams. Who's your pick for the Final Four?
Well, people ask that all the time, and it just depends on seating. So, if you're asking that question anytime before the selection committee comes out with seatings and who's where, I could give you the four best teams, but
Give me
come
four best
seating
teams then.
time, three of them might be in the same region.
Give me the four best teams in your opinion this year.
All right, assuming UCLA has Muhammad plays, I'll take Indiana, UCLA, Kansas, and I hate Kentucky. I know there's a couple who are going to be really mad at me. So I'm going to leave them out just so they can get pissed at me on Twitter. Ohio State.
Oh, two Big Ten teams. All right, last question before we get to the coupon and close everything out. Who will be playing for? Well, it's a twofold question. I didn't scan all the way down in the pop-up box. They want to know, who do you think is going to be in the BCS title game, and who do you think is playing for the Super Bowl, and who's going to win each?
BCS title game? Well, you can't knock Alabama. I'll go out on a limb here and say anybody but Notre Dame. But it might well be Alabama and K-State.
All right, Alabama, K-State, and we spoke earlier. So with that projected line, you picked Bama. Who's playing in the Super Bowl and who's going to win?
Well, I'm kind of a homer. I would have said Houston until Cushing got hurt. Either Pittsburgh or New England against either San Francisco or the Giants. New England will win it if Gronkowski stays healthy.
Well, Dave, tons of information, and I love having you on the webinars. You're not flashy, but you know your shit. Anybody who watches this in the next 72 hours,
Do you want me to be like? You want me to be like VR? I can do that.
Get the earrings, the club shirts, and shit. Essler,
no, I can do. I can sound like a real wise guy.
$10 off any purchase next 72 hours in honor of our guest of honor, Essler 10. And like I said, shoot me an email, Johnny at Pregame, if you'd like. I'll take care of you to take an investment into Dave Essler, one of the most solid guys in college basketball. Well worth the money. He's proven that year in and year out. Dave, I appreciate you taking the hour. I know everybody appreciated. I'm Johnny Detroit. He's Dave Essler. On behalf of pregame.com, I appreciate everyone who tuned in. That's going to do it. We're back next week. And as always, from me to you, the people's champ, Johnny Detroit, best of luck.